When we first started talking about planning, one of the things that I mentioned was the need to forecast, the need to look into the future and decide what the future will bring. We can't plan for the future unless we have some idea of what the future is going to be like. So when we're planning for the future, we have to decide what it's going to be like, but we always know that we can't be sure. The future is unknown. So it's kind of a bit of a challenge. How do I predict the future? How do I decide what it'll be like when I know positively that I don't know what it's going to be like? And yet I have no choice but to try. It's impossible to plan without forecasting the future, and it's impossible to organize, it's impossible to lead and to control and to manage without planning. So here's Plan A, the most common model for sales forecasting. This is something we talked about in the last unit. This is a regression analysis. What we've looked at is monthly sales over time. And the actual monthly sales go up and down, affected by different things. We use a process called regression. In this case, it's called least squares regression. There are other models, but they all look about the same. And what we've done is said, okay, I'm going to extend this trend line. I'm going to extend the previous year's sales to an estimate of what I will sell next year. So I would say right here is what I expect to sell next year. I know that I could be wrong, but I hope I'm not. I have to forecast sales because without a sales forecast, the production manager doesn't know how many units to build. I don't know how many salesmen I'm going to have working the market. I don't know how many customer service representatives I'll have to service after the sale. I can't do anything without some idea of how many units I will sell next year. So I'm going to have to come up with a forecast. This model or something like it is the standard approach in most cases for most organizations when they have previous monthly sales. This one falls apart and becomes unusable when it's a brand new product and I didn't have a last year. I've never sold one of these things before. Then I need a new model, a new way to forecast that doesn't assume the past predicts the future. So Plan B in sales forecasting is typically some kind of simulation modeling. This is another quantitative model that normally uses a computer and can be sometimes very complex. I try and build a mathematical model of how customers will make the decisions, what prices that they will be willing to pay, what the demand will be affected by the economy, affected by decisions my competitors make, and I'll try and build all of these numbers into this complex model. And I'll run it on a computer, and it will give me an answer. It will give me an estimate of how many units I will sell next year. I can then adjust this time and time again and produce a whole series of those scenario plans that we discussed early in this module and compare each of those until I find the one that I think is most realistic, that I think will most likely produce the best estimate of future sales. This can be very complex, it can take a long time, and it can be very expensive, but it's often the best way of getting a usable forecast on a new product or something new that I have no history for. If all of that fails, then I go to Plan C. I'm going to guess. People, for very good reasons, have been guessing about the future throughout much of our history. We still do it even though we know it doesn't work. We just don't have a better way to arrive at an idea of what will happen in an unknown future. So we've had crystal balls and we've had read tarot cards and tea leaves and things like that. People are always looking for things that they think are ways to predict the future. And in all cases, it's simply a guess. At some point in most organizations, you're going to have to guess about the future. Here's some quick technical advice. Never guess alone. Use a technique called the Delphi technique. Instead of simply providing your best guess about sales for the year, Interview a broad variety of people. Interview salespeople, interview production people, interview your accountants, interview some customers, interview anybody you think might know something about sales in the future, and then combine and average their guesses to get a result. This is called the Delphi technique, and it is absolutely a reasonable guess-based decision-making technique for forecasting the future. If you like history, you might recognize the name, the Delphi technique, based on a famous oracle in ancient Greece, the Oracle of Delphi, where a group of women called Pythonesses were supposed to go into deep trances and be able to predict the future. Now, they were very, very good at these predictions and would always issue a prediction that had some safety built in. There's a famous story of King Croesus going and asking about the outcome of his planned war with the Persians. And the Oracle at Delphi told him, "We see that a great army will be defeated." Croesus was excited. He thought, that means I'm going to win. He went to battle with the Persians and he lost miserably. When he came back and complained to the Oracle at Delphi that the prediction had been wrong, they simply said, well, a great army was lost. It just happened to be yours. Sorry about that. We have been doing these kinds of forecasting techniques since the ancient Greeks. We don't seem to have gotten any better at it. But I will suggest when you do this, recognize all forecasts are actually guesses about the future. Even the most elaborate analytical forecast with the most regression analysis, the most complex simulation modeling, always represents a guess. So anytime you are planning for the future, you are dealing with conditions of uncertainty, and that means you're taking a risk. When subordinates bring you projections for the future, when you're the manager who's responsible for making a decision on launching a new product or taking on a risky venture that could hurt you in the future, remember that you have to take risks. You cannot eliminate them, only manage them. But also when they present you with elaborate charts of numbers and they tell you that you're going to sell 25,000 units a month next year, remember where they really got those numbers. This is forecasting. I invite you to read the chapter associated with this unit, to review the questions associated with this unit, and try and answer them on your own. If you have questions about forecasting yourself, if you're uncertain about anything that we've discussed today, please feel free to watch this video as often as you like.